We're now going to talk about cognitive development in infancy. Whenever we talk about cognitive development, we always have to start with Piaget. So this is his sensorimotor stage. It was stage 1 of the 4-stage theory. So he said this is the first 2 years of life, so from birth till age 2. He loves stages, so he broke this one stage down into 6 sub-stages. I'm not going to expect you to know those, so I'm going to simplify those for you. They just describe how the infant interacts with the environment. It essentially starts with reflexes, becomes intentional behavior, and then ends with symbolic thought at the very end of the sensorimotor stage. So exploring the environment. First, newborns react reflexively to the environment, but slowly they bring those reflexes under purposeful control. And they do this through the process called circular reactions. We see circular reactions from about 1 to 4 months. So in these, the infant does something on accident. It likes it, gets a pleasant result, so begins to repeat the action, learning and getting more successful each time. So for example, an infant is flailing his arm and hand around and his thumb ends up in his mouth. He reflexively sucks on his thumb. That was nice, right? That's fun. Thumb gets into the mouth a little faster and more accurately every time. So the action acts as its own reward, and then getting the thumb into the mouth and sucking on it gradually come under conscious control. So this is why they're called circular reactions, because they repeat over and over. He divided these into primary circular reactions, which are circular reactions dealing with your own body, and secondary circular reactions, which are actions dealing with objects. But he said that this is how infants learn, is through that repetitive behavior. So they get to intentional behavior at around 8 months old. The means and ends of an activity are distinct for a first time. That means things aren't on accident. They're doing things on purpose. They use an action to reach a toy. For instance, move another toy out of a way to get to the one that they wanted. Okay, so now they're doing things on purpose. It's intentional. And then they get into active experiments. This happens at about 12 months old. Now the baby is a little scientist, actively manipulating things to see what happens. That rattle made a noise. I wonder if this toy will make a noise if I shake it the same way. They are now capable of doing things just to see what happens. What happens when I drop this bowl off my high chair? Oh, Mom reached down and picked it up. If I drop this bowl off my high chair again, will Mom reach and pick it up again? They are not trying to annoy you, I promise. They are learning. They lack the cognitive sophistication to be doing things just to annoy you. Everything is just an experiment to see what happens. Okay, so they're not doing things just to annoy or anger people. Everything, remember, is an experiment. I'm saying it a lot because it's an important point. They are scientists. They are learning. So circular reactions are a big part of learning in the sensorimotor stage, and it's kind of difficult to explain them, so I have this video here that shows you. If you can't watch the embedded video, here is the link. Please pause my lecture and go watch that so you can see what circular reactions look like. The primary goal of the sensorimotor period is this idea of object permanence. It's the major milestone of the sensorimotor stage. This is defined as the understanding that objects continue to exist even when you can't see them. Young babies will lose interest in an object as soon as it disappears, suggesting that they forgot it even exists. And I have a video here demonstrating that idea. So when you hide a toy under the blanket, the baby immediately loses interest. It's like they forgot the toy was even there. At about 8 months old, babies will begin to look for a toy that is covered by a cloth. They'll reach out and move the cloth to try to find the toy, suggesting that they now know it exists even if they can't see it. Piaget argued that object permanence is not fully developed until about 18 months, but modern research refutes that. The development of object permanence can lead to separation anxiety, as the child now knows that even if mom isn't in sight, she still exists. And we'll talk about that more in a minute. So deferred imitation. This is watching someone perform an act and then perform it yourself at a later time. So have you ever seen a child talk on a phone or act out actions they've seen an adult doing? That's deferred imitation. Piaget believed this didn't appear until about 18 months. since it involves the ability to mentally store and represent an action. However, newborns can imitate actions immediately, but it seems to be a process of their mirror neurons, which are neurons in your brain that fire when you see someone else experiencing something rather than experiencing it yourself. So early imitation appears to be reflexive, just based on those mirror neurons, and it's not a decision on the part of the infant. Research has shown that even 9-month-olds can imitate actions even after a time delay, such as the next day. The older the child, the longer they can go between witnessing the action and imitating it as their memories improve. Using symbols. The ability to use symbols appears at the end of this stage. Language is a symbol. If I point to something or wave goodbye, that's a symbol. Babies are capable of this. Babies begin to engage in pretend play. This happens in stages, with the first signs of symbolic play appearing in toddlers and becoming much more sophisticated in preschoolers. So in the first 2 years, pretend play is mostly about mimicking actions. They'll push a train around and make choo-choo noises. The toy is a symbol for a train. They may pretend to cook or brush their teeth simply by copying what they've seen adults do. So pretend play is mostly copying what they've seen. This level of symbolic thought doesn't show up until the end of the sensorimotor stage, so it's more the providence of toddlers than infants. So some criticisms of Piaget. Piaget seemed to underestimate the abilities of infants. Deferred imitation seems to show up at about 9 months, not 18 as Piaget suggested. And Piaget said object permanence starts to appear around 8 months, but modern research has shown it actually appears around 4 months. The reason for this is maybe he wasn't testing comprehension, he was testing performance. So maybe babies didn't look for the toy not because they thought it ceased to exist, but because they lacked the motor skills to do it. So Piaget was just measuring what infants could do, not really measuring what they understand. And again, he put his theory in stages, but development seems to be more gradual and continuous than his theory depicts. So let's talk more about object permanence. I told you how modern research has shown that it shows up much earlier than Piaget, and this video shows the experiment and the researcher who discovered that. If you can't watch this video, it's okay, I'm going to describe it to you, but I suggest it, and I suggest looking up this researcher and some of the other things she did. So what she did was she wanted to use the idea of habituation and the fact that babies stare longer at things that surprise them. So instead of hiding a toy and seeing if they look for it, she showed them a video where an object was hidden behind a screen, and that screen would fold back and either the object would seem to disappear or the screen would stop as though it had hit the hidden object. And the babies who were in the impossible condition, the one where the screen kept going backwards as though the object didn't exist, showed surprise. That means that they knew that there was an object behind that screen even though they couldn't see it anymore. And her research was showing that babies as young as 4 or even 3 months were surprised by this impossible condition. So she showed through this experiment and many others that babies develop object permanence much sooner. And her name is Renee, I cannot pronounce her last name correctly, Belgeron. So I highly recommend looking her up. She did some fascinating experiments with infants. So here's a quest for you. Look up the Mickey Mouse experiment. Send me an email describing it and tell me what it does or doesn't show about infant cognition. I'm not sure if you'll be able to find this or not, but it's another fascinating study on infants. I'll give you 10 XP if you can find it. So next we're going to talk about morality in babies. Moral development is a really hard topic to place as it relates to both cognitive and social emotional development, but I like to put it with cognitive. So morality includes cognition, emotion, and behavior. We will discuss moral development more later, but we should discuss its roots now. So what do you think? Do babies have a sense of morality? Can they tell the difference between right and wrong? Well, babies and toddlers do display empathy, and it might be due to those mirror neurons I talked about. If a bunch of babies are in a room together, if one of them starts to cry, the rest will start to cry, probably because of mirror neurons. Toddlers will be sad, will feel sad when someone else is sad, specifically their mother. So we do see empathy in babies and toddlers. I have another video here, please watch. This is an infant morality experiment. Again, they just look at what babies are more interested in and show them characters acting mean and characters acting nice. And consistently, babies prefer the nice character over the mean character. So toys that show good and helpful behavior are preferred over toys that exhibit bad or unhelpful behavior. So it can be argued that infants do have a very basic sense of morality, a sense of right and wrong. In fact, these studies have shown that baby morality includes the ability to judge the actions of others. They can watch actions and decide if they're nice or mean. They do have a basic sense of justice. And they do show reactions to altruism, which is like generosity, doing things for other people, and nastiness. So they do seem to have a basic sense of morality. So here's a discussion I will put up on Blackboard. The fact that babies display rudimentary morality indicates that empathy and altruism are adaptive. That means they help ensure the survival of the species. How are they adaptive and why are they adaptive? So I'm going to put this on the discussion forum on Blackboard, and I would appreciate your contributions. Okay, in the next video we're going to talk about language development.